The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass of the bakery window, watching the gray sheets of water transform the street into a river of forgotten dreams. My reflection stared back at me. Hollow eyes, flour-dusted apron, hair escaping from a fraying braid. 18 years old, and I looked like I'd lived 30. The smell of burnt sugar hung in the air, mixing with the yeast and desperation that seemed to permeate every corner of Moretti's bakery. My hands ached from kneading dough since 4 a.m, the cuts on my fingers stinging with each movement. Mrs. Moretti had been in a mood today, throwing pans and cursing in Italian when the ciabatta came out too dense. "Sophia!" Her shrill voice cut through my thoughts. "Table 7 needs service. Move." I grabbed the coffee pot with trembling hands, my stomach growling. I hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon. Couldn't afford to. Not when every penny went toward the shoebox apartment I shared with my aunt, the apartment where she spent most days drowning in bottles, leaving me to cover rent, utilities, and her debts. Table 7 sat in the corner, partially hidden by the ancient espresso machine that wheezed like a dying animal. I approached with my eyes down, the way I'd learned to move through the world, invisible, unthreatening, forgettable. The cup shattered before I even saw him. My hands had been shaking worse than I thought. The porcelain exploded against the marble floor, coffee spreading like blood across the white tiles. I dropped to my knees immediately, my heart hammering, already calculating how much Mrs. Moretti would dock from my pay. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry," I whispered, gathering the shards with my bare hands. A piece sliced my palm, and I watched blood well up, mixing with the spilled coffee. "Stop." The voice froze me mid-motion. Deep, commanding, with an edge that made every nerve in my body stand at attention. I'd heard that tone before, from men who expected obedience, who didn't ask twice. Slowly, I looked up. He sat with a stillness that seemed impossible for someone so young. Mid-20s at most, but his dark eyes held centuries of shadows. The suit he wore probably cost more than I made in a year. Black, perfectly tailored, with a subtle sheen that caught the dim bakery light. His hair was dark, pushed back from a face that could have been carved from marble, beautiful in a way that felt dangerous. But it was his eyes that trapped me. They weren't looking at my face. They were fixed on my bleeding hand with an intensity that made my breath catch. 2 men stood behind him, massive and silent, their hands clasped in front of them in a way that suggested they were hiding weapons. The other customers had gone quiet. Even Mrs. Moretti had stopped her constant muttering. "You're hurt." He said it like an accusation. "It's nothing, sir. I'll clean this up and bring you. Look at me." I did. I couldn't help it. His gaze pulled at something deep inside me, something I didn't understand. His jaw was clenched, a muscle ticking in his cheek. He was angry, but not at the mess. The emotion rolling off him felt too big, too complex for a simple accident. "Dante," he said, not breaking eye contact with me. "First aid kit. Now." One of the men behind him moved immediately, disappearing through the bakery's front door into the rain. The other remained, a wall of muscle and threat. "Sir, really, I'm fine. What's your name?" My throat felt tight. Something about him demanded truth, made lying impossible. Sophia Chen." He repeated it slowly, like he was tasting each syllable. "Sophia." Then his eyes finally released mine, traveling over my flour-covered apron, my worn sneakers, the bruise on my wrist from where I'd bumped the industrial mixer. His expression darkened with each detail. "How old are you?" 18. The word came out as barely a whisper. Something flickered across his face, satisfaction mixed with something that looked almost like pain. He leaned back, and I noticed his hands were gripping the armrests of his chair hard enough that his knuckles had gone white. The man, Dante, returned with a leather case that looked far too expensive to be a simple first aid kit. But it wasn't Dante who opened it. He stood, unfolding to his full height, and suddenly the bakery felt too small. He was at least 6'2", broad-shouldered, radiating a presence that made me want to simultaneously run toward him and away from him. He stepped over the broken cup like it didn't exist, and reached for my hand. "You can let me help you, not a request." His fingers wrapped around my wrist, gentle but absolutely firm, and the touch sent electricity racing up my arm. His hands were warm, slightly rough, and completely steady as he turned my palm up to examine the cut. I'd never been this close to someone like him. He smelled like expensive cologne, sandalwood and something darker, more mysterious, like smoke and secrets. His breathing was controlled, measured, but I could feel tension radiating from him in waves. "This needs stitches." His voice had gone cold. "I can't afford— Luca!" He snapped his fingers, and the second man stepped forward. "Call Dr. Rossini. Tell him to come to the estate immediately." "The estate?" My voice cracked. "No, sir, I have to work. Mrs. Moretti will— Mrs. Moretti." He finally looked away from me, his gaze landing on my employer who had emerged from the kitchen. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "This girl is injured on your premises. Explain to me why she was working with equipment while clearly exhausted." Mrs. Moretti's face went pale. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. "Mr. Caruso. I didn't realize— Caruso." The name hit me like a physical blow. Everyone in this city knew that name. The Caruso family didn't just run businesses. They ran everything. Politics, police, entire neighborhoods. They were the kind of power that made governments nervous. And I'd just bled on one of them. "How much does she owe you?" he asked Mrs. Moretti, still holding my hand like it was something precious. "Nothing. She owes nothing. In fact, her pay—" "I'm not asking about her pay. I'm asking about her debt, her aunt's debt." The world tilted. How did he know about Aunt Marie's gambling debts? About the loan sharks who showed up monthly, taking whatever we had? Mrs. Moretti's eyes darted to me, then back to him. "I don't know what you— Dante." He didn't raise his voice, but the man behind him pulled out a phone and began typing with disturbing efficiency. "Find out exactly what the Chen family owes, and to whom. I want names and amounts within the hour. No." The word burst from me before I could stop it. "Please, you don't understand. Those men, if you interfere—" He finally looked back at me, and the intensity in his gaze nearly knocked me backward. "Those men work for me, Sophia. Everything in this city works for me." The first aid kit lay forgotten on the table. He was still holding my hand, his thumb now brushing across my knuckles in a gesture that felt almost unconscious, possessive. "I don't understand," I managed to say. "You will." He pulled a pristine white handkerchief from his pocket and wrapped it around my bleeding palm with surprising gentleness. "You're coming with me." "I can't. My shift is over." He turned to Mrs. Moretti. "She no longer works here. You'll prepare her final check with 2 months' severance and have it ready within the hour, or I'll have the health department here by lunch. Am I clear?" Mrs. Moretti nodded frantically. Panic clawed at my chest. I needed this job. Needed the money, the routine, the invisibility it provided. "Please, Mr. Caruso, I need to work. If you're trying to help, I appreciate it, but—" "I'm not trying to help." His hand slid from my wrist to my elbow, steadying me as I tried to stand. "I'm telling you what's going to happen. You're going to come with me to get that hand properly treated. Then we're going to discuss the terms of your employment with me." "Employment? Did you think I would let you go back to this?" He gestured around the dingy bakery with something close to disgust. "Working yourself to exhaustion for pennies, bleeding and apologizing for existing?" The other customers were staring now, whispering behind their hands. One of them had a phone out, probably already spreading the news that a Caruso had walked into Moretti's and left with the bakery girl. "I don't even know you," I whispered. Something like pain flashed across his face again, so quick I almost missed it. "No," he said softly. "You don't. But I know you, Sophia. I've always known you." Before I could process that bizarre statement, he was guiding me toward the door, his hand still on my elbow. The 2 men fell into formation around us. One ahead, one behind. Protection or prison, I couldn't tell which. The rain hit my face as we stepped outside, but I barely felt it. A black SUV idled at the curb, sleek and menacing. Windows tinted so dark they looked like pools of oil. The door was already open, and I could see leather seats and the interior that smelled like luxury. "Please." I tried one more time. "I don't understand what's happening." He helped me into the vehicle with a hand on my lower back, the touch burning through my thin uniform. Then he slid in beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. The door closed with a heavy thunk that sounded like finality. You don't need to understand yet. The SUV began to move, and I watched the bakery disappear behind sheets of rain. All you need to know is that you're safe now. You'll never have to worry about money again. Never have to apologize for taking up space. Never have to bleed alone in some filthy bakery. But why? My voice broke. Why would you do this for a stranger? He turned to face me fully, and in the dim interior of the vehicle, his features looked almost inhuman, too perfect, too intense, carved from shadows and obsession. His hand came up, fingers brushing my cheek so gently it felt like a prayer. Because, he said, each word heavy with meaning I couldn't decipher. You were never a stranger to me, Sophia. You were always mine. You just didn't know it yet. The city blurred past the windows, rain making everything look like a watercolor painting washing away. And as his thumb traced the line of my jaw with devastating gentleness, I realized that whatever had just begun in that bakery, whatever agreement I'd walked into without agreeing to anything, there would be no walking away from it. From him. The SUV turned onto a private road I'd never seen before, heading toward a part of the city where people like me didn't belong. And Alessandro Caruso watched me with eyes that held secrets, obsession, and something that looked dangerously close to devotion. I was terrified. But more terrifying was the small, desperate part of me that felt, for the first time in years, like maybe I was going home. The estate emerged from the rain like something out of a dark fairy tale. Wrought iron gates swung open automatically as we approached, revealing a driveway lined with ancient oak trees that seemed to whisper warnings. The mansion itself was a sprawling testament to old money and older power. 3 stories of stone and glass, with columns that reached toward the weeping sky like prayers or threats. Lights glowed in tall windows, warm and inviting, which somehow made everything feel more ominous. My breathing had gone shallow. The handkerchief around my hand was soaked through with blood now, a crimson bloom against the white fabric. Alessandro, I couldn't think of him as Mr. Caruso anymore, not after the way he'd touched my face. Hadn't said another word during the drive, but his presence beside me felt like a living thing, aware and watchful. The SUV stopped beneath a covered portico. Before I could reach for the door handle, Dante had it open, offering his hand. I took it carefully, my legs shaking as I stepped out into air that smelled like rain and roses. This way, Miss Chen. Dante's voice was surprisingly gentle for someone built like a tank. Alessandro appeared at my other side, his hand finding the small of my back again. That proprietary touch that made my skin burn even through my uniform. The doctor is already here, he said, guiding me up marble steps that probably cost more than my entire apartment building. The entrance hall stole what little breath I had left. Crystal chandeliers hung from a ceiling painted with Renaissance-style frescoes. A grand staircase curved upward, carpeted in deep burgundy. Everything gleamed. The floors, the mirrors, the small fortune in artwork lining the walls. This wasn't just wealth, this was dynasty. Alessandro! A woman's voice echoed from above, sharp with concern. I looked up to see an elegant figure descending the stairs, her silver hair swept into a perfect chignon, wearing a silk dress that probably required a staff to maintain. Despite her age, maybe early 60s, she moved with grace that spoke of ballet training and breeding. Mama. Alessandro's tone shifted, becoming almost careful. This isn't a good time, so I've heard. Her dark eyes, so like her son's, landed on me, and I watched her expression cycle through surprise, calculation, and something that looked almost like recognition. You brought a girl home. The girl, if the rumors from town are to be believed. Dr. Rossini is waiting in the study, Alessandro said, his hand pressing more firmly against my back, not moving me forward, but holding me close, shielding me. His mother descended the last few steps, her gaze never leaving my face. She was beautiful in a severe way, the kind of beauty that came with expectations and disappointments. She's bleeding on my marble. I looked down in horror. Sure enough, drops of blood had fallen from my wrapped hand, creating a trail of crimson dots across the pristine white floor. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean. Stop apologizing. Alessandro's voice cut through my panic. Mama, this is Sophia Chen. Sophia, my mother, Isabella Caruso. You'll become acquainted later. Right now she needs medical attention. Chen. Isabella repeated the name like she was placing it in a file cabinet in her mind. The daughter of... Later, something dangerous edged Alessandro's tone. His mother heard it too, because she stepped aside, though her eyes continued tracking me as we passed. The study was all dark wood and leather, books lining the walls from floor to ceiling. A fire crackled in a massive fireplace, warming the space against the chill of the rain outside. An elderly man with wire-rimmed glasses and a doctor's bag stood waiting, his expression neutral but professional. Dr. Rossini, thank you for coming. Alessandro finally released me, but only to guide me toward a leather chair positioned near the fire. The heat felt incredible after the cold rain, and I found myself sinking into the cushions without meaning to. Of course, Mr. Caruso, the doctor approached with the easy confidence of someone who'd made house calls to this family for decades. Now, let's see what we have here. Alessandro remained standing beside my chair, so close that I could feel the fabric of his trousers brush against my shoulder. As Dr. Rossini unwrapped the blood-soaked handkerchief, I saw Alessandro's jaw clench, that muscle ticking again. It's not as bad as it looks, the doctor said after a moment, gently probing the wound. I winced, and Alessandro's hand immediately came to rest on my shoulder. Heavy, warm, grounding. A few stitches should do it. The cut is clean. I'll need to numb the area, Dr. Rossini continued, pulling supplies from his bag. You might feel a pinch. I nodded, trying to focus on anything but the man standing over me like a dark angel. The fire, the rain against the windows, the smell of old books and expensive whiskey. But my awareness kept returning to Alessandro's hand on my shoulder, his thumb now moving in small circles against my collarbone. The injection stung. I bit my lip, refusing to make a sound, and felt Alessandro's grip tighten. When I glanced up at him, his eyes were fixed on my face with that same unsettling intensity, like he was memorizing every micro-expression. How long has she been working at that bakery? He asked Dr. Rossini, though he was still looking at me. I couldn't say, Mr. Caruso. She has old burn scars on her forearms, defensive wounds on her hands. She's underweight, probably hasn't eaten properly in weeks. He catalogued my failures like evidence in a trial. When was the last time you had a full meal, Sophia? The question caught me off guard. Yesterday. Lunch. Yesterday. He repeated it flatly. It's nearly 6 p.m. You've worked since 4 a.m. on an empty stomach. Dr. Rossini had begun stitching, the needle pulling through my numbed flesh. I watched rather than feel, fascinated and disturbed by the black thread weaving through my skin like embroidery. Dante, Alessandro said without turning. I hadn't even realized the man had followed us into the study. Have the kitchen prepare a full meal. Something warm, nutritious, and bring it to the East Wing guest suite. The East Wing? Dr. Rossini's hands paused for just a moment. That's quite close to the family quarters. I'm aware. Alessandro's tone suggested the conversation was over. Mr. Caruso. I tried again, my voice sounding small in this massive room full of power and secrets. I appreciate the medical attention, truly. But I should go home. My aunt will be worried, and I have to find another job. Your aunt is currently passed out on her couch with 2 empty vodka bottles. He said it without cruelty, just stated it as fact. And you won't need another job. You'll be working here. Here? I looked around the study, trying to imagine what role someone like me could possibly fill in a place like this. Doing what? Whatever I need you to do. He finally moved, circling around the chair to crouch in front of me, bringing his face level with mine. Up close, I could see tiny flecks of gold in his dark eyes, a small scar above his left eyebrow. You'll live here, in the East Wing. You'll have your own suite, your own staff. Your aunt's debts will be cleared. You'll want for nothing. My heart was hammering so hard I was certain he could hear it. That sounds like a prison? His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Or salvation. All done, Dr. Rossini announced, stepping back to admire his work. 5 neat stitches crossed my palm, the thread dark against my pale skin. He wrapped my hand in proper gauze, his movements practiced and efficient. Keep it clean and dry. I'll return in a week to remove the stitches. Thank you, doctor. Alessandro stood in one fluid motion, and I immediately felt the loss of his proximity like a physical thing. He walked the doctor to the door, their voices dropping to a murmur I couldn't quite catch. Alone for the first time since the bakery, I tried to process everything. The mansion, the staff, the wealth that permeated every surface, and Alessandro Caruso, who looked at me like I was something rare and precious, something he'd been searching for and finally found. You were always mine. You just didn't know it yet. What did that mean? How could I belong to someone I'd never met? The door closed behind Dr. Rossini, and Alessandro returned, moving with that predatory grace that made him seem more dangerous than the armed men who followed him. He stopped at a side table, pouring amber liquid from a crystal decanter into 2 glasses. "I don't drink," I said as he approached with both glasses. "It's brandy. It'll help with the shock." He pressed one into my good hand, then sat in the chair across from me, close enough that our knees almost touched. "Drink, Sophia." I took a small sip, and the liquid burned down my throat, warming everything it touched. He watched me over the rim of his own glass, and I realized he hadn't drunk any yet. He was waiting, making sure I was comfortable first. "Why are you doing this?" The question came out steadier than I felt. "Which part?" "All of it. Taking me from the bakery. Bringing me here. The doctor. The job offer. If that's what this is." I gestured around with my bandaged hand. "You don't know me." "But I do." He set his glass down with deliberate care, then leaned forward, elbows on his knees. The firelight cast shadows across his face, making him look even more otherworldly. "I've known you since you were 14 years old, Sophia. Since the day you moved into that apartment with your aunt after your parents died." Ice flooded my veins. "How do you—" "I was 21, already running parts of my father's empire, learning how to be the man everyone expected me to become." His eyes never left mine. "I saw you at the grocery store on 3rd Street. You were buying the cheapest brands of everything, counting coins, trying to figure out how to make $10 feed 2 people for a week. You wore a jacket 3 sizes too big, and you kept apologizing to everyone, even when they bumped into you." The memory hit me like a wave. I remembered that day, remembered the shame of counting pennies at the register while people behind me sighed impatiently. Remembered the cold walk home with bags that felt heavier than they should. "You watched me buy groceries?" My voice came out strangled. "I watched you survive." He reached across the space between us, his fingers finding my uninjured hand. "I watched you for 4 years, Sophia. Watched you work yourself sick at that bakery. Watched you give everything to an aunt who gave nothing back. Watched you fade a little more each day, becoming invisible, because you thought that was safer than being seen. This wasn't romantic. This was terrifying. That's obsession?" He supplied the word I couldn't say. "Yes, it is. I'm not going to lie to you and pretend this is anything other than what it is. I've been obsessed with you since the moment I saw you trying to be brave in that grocery store, counting out pennies with shaking hands. You're insane." But I didn't pull my hand away from his. "Probably." His thumb traced across my knuckles, the same gesture from the bakery. "But you're here now, 18, finally legal, finally mine to protect the way I've wanted to for 4 years. The implications crashed over me. You waited for me to turn 18. I waited for you to be old enough that no one could question my claim." He said it without shame, without apology. "I've eliminated every man who looked at you wrong, paid off debts you didn't know existed, made sure you had work at that bakery when others were being laid off. I've been taking care of you from the shadows, Sophia. Now I'm bringing you into the light." My mouth had gone dry. This man, this beautiful, terrifying man, had been orchestrating my life for years. The loan sharks who stopped coming last year, mine. They report to me now. They were never going to touch you. The landlord who didn't raise our rent. I own the building. My aunt's tab at the liquor store. I pay it. Every week. I should have been screaming. Should have been running for the door, demanding to leave, calling for help. But the desperate, exhausted part of me, the part that had been drowning for 4 years, wanted to sink into the life he was offering. Wanted to let someone else carry the weight for once. This is crazy. I whispered. Yes. He brought my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles that felt like a brand. But you're not going to leave, because you're just as tired of surviving as I am of watching you suffer. The fire crackled. The rain continued its assault on the windows. And Alessandro Caruso held my hand like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to the earth. What happens now? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. Now? He stood, pulling me up with him. Now I show you to your room. You eat. You rest. Tomorrow we'll discuss the details of your new position here. And what position is that? He smiled then. Really smiled. And it transformed his face from merely beautiful to absolutely devastating. My wife. The world tilted. What? You'll marry me, Sophia. Willingly or not, you'll marry me. He began leading me toward the door, his hand once again on my back. But I'm hoping for willingly. I've waited 4 years. I can wait a few more weeks for you to understand that this is where you belong. My legs moved automatically, following him out of the study and up that grand staircase. My mind was screaming, but my body felt numb, disconnected. Marriage. To a man I'd met hours ago, a man who'd been watching me for years. A man who looked at me like I was oxygen. We reached the 2nd floor, then continued up to the 3rd. This level was quieter, more intimate. Fewer servants rushing about. The carpet here was plush beneath my feet, muffling our footsteps. Alessandro stopped at a door, opening it to reveal a suite that made my entire apartment look like a closet. 4-poster bed with silk sheets. A sitting area with velvet furniture. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens, currently shrouded in rain. A door that led to what looked like a bathroom bigger than my bedroom. This is yours, he said, watching my reaction. Everything in this room is yours. The clothes in the closet, I had them prepared in your size. The bathroom is fully stocked. If you need anything at all, there's a phone on the nightstand that connects directly to the staff. I walked in slowly, running my good hand along the footboard of the bed. The wood was smooth, expensive, real. This wasn't a dream. This was happening. The door locks from the inside, he continued. I won't enter without your permission, not until you're ready. I turned to face him. This man who'd turned my life inside out in a matter of hours. And if I'm never ready? Something dark flickered across his expression. Then I'll wait. I'm a patient man, Sophia, but make no mistake. You are mine. You've been mine since you were 14 years old and counting pennies. You just need time to accept it. He started to leave, then paused in the doorway. Your dinner will arrive in 20 minutes. After you eat, there's a bath waiting. Get some rest. We have much to discuss tomorrow. Alessandro, I said, testing his name on my tongue. He went still, every line of his body tensing. This is kidnapping. No. He turned back to me, and the look in his eyes was pure possession. This is rescue. You just don't know it yet. The door closed behind him with a soft click, and I was alone in a room that cost more than everything I'd ever owned combined. I walked to the window, pressing my forehead against the cool glass, watching the rain. Somewhere in the city, my aunt was passed out drunk. My old life was dissolving like sugar in water. And in this mansion, in these silk sheets, in the dark eyes of Alessandro Caruso, a new life waited. A life I hadn't chosen, but maybe, whispered that desperate part of me. Maybe it was the life I'd been drowning my way toward all along. I didn't sleep. How could I? In a bed that felt like sleeping on clouds. In a room where every shadow might hide watching eyes. The dinner had arrived as promised. Roasted chicken with herbs I couldn't name, vegetables that actually tasted like something, bread that melted on my tongue. I'd eaten mechanically, my mind replaying every word Alessandro had spoken. I've been obsessed with you since the moment I saw you. The bath had been torture in its luxury. Water that stayed hot, soap that smelled like jasmine, towels so soft they felt like sin. I'd found pajamas in the closet, silk, of course, in a deep emerald that made my pale skin look almost luminous. Everything fit perfectly. He'd been watching me long enough to know my exact measurements. That thought should have terrified me more than it did. Now I sat by the window as dawn broke over the estate, painting everything in shades of rose and gold. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the world washed clean and glittering. Gardens stretched as far as I could see, manicured hedges, marble fountains, paths that wound between trees older than the country itself, a prison in paradise. A knock at the door made me jump. "Miss Chen?" A woman's voice, accented and gentle. "May I enter?" I pulled a robe around myself, another perfectly fitted item from the closet, and opened the door. A woman in her 50s stood there, her dark hair streaked with gray, wearing a simple black dress with a white apron. Her face was kind, weathered by years of smiling. "I'm Maria," she said, "the head housekeeper. Mr. Caruso asked me to help you prepare for breakfast. May I come in?" I stepped aside, and she entered with the easy familiarity of someone who'd worked in this house for decades. She carried a garment bag and a small case. "You didn't sleep," she observed, setting her items on the bed. Not a question. "No. I wouldn't either, in your position." She unzipped the garment bag, revealing a dress that made my breath catch. Deep blue, simple but elegant, with a cut that suggested sophistication without being overtly expensive. "But if I may offer some advice, Miss Chen?" "Sophia, please, Sophia." She smiled warmly. "Mr. Alessandro is many things. Dangerous, certainly. Possessive, absolutely. But cruel, never. Not to those he cares about. He doesn't know me well enough to care about me." Maria's laugh was soft, knowing. "Oh, child. He's known you longer than you think. I've worked for this family for 30 years. I've seen him grow from a boy into the man he is now. And in all that time, I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." She gestured for me to sit at the vanity, and I obeyed without thinking. Her hands were gentle as she began brushing my hair, working through the tangles with practiced ease. "4 years ago," Maria continued, "he came home one night and told his father he'd found the woman he was going to marry. His father laughed, said Alessandro was too young to know what he wanted. But Alessandro just smiled and said, 'She doesn't know I exist yet, but she will, when the time is right.' My reflection stared back at me from the mirror, pale and wide-eyed. That's not romantic. That's the way men like Alessandro love," Maria finished, "completely. Absolutely. Without compromise." She began pinning my hair up in a style that was elegant but not fussy. "His father was the same way with his mother. Saw her at a charity gala, decided she was his, and moved heaven and earth to make it happen." "Did she have a choice?" Maria's hands paused. "We always have choices, Sophia. The question is which choice we can live with." She met my eyes in the mirror. "You could run. He wouldn't stop you. But where would you run to? Back to that apartment? Back to working yourself to death in that bakery? Back to invisibility?" The words hit harder than I expected because they were true. What was I running back to? A life of exhaustion and fear? An aunt who barely remembered I existed? A city that had never noticed when I was drowning? "He's offering you everything," Maria said softly. "Protection, security, a place and a family. Yes, it comes with conditions. Yes, he's possessive and overwhelming. But ask yourself, has anyone else ever cared enough to even see you suffering?" Tears burned behind my eyes, but I blinked them back. I wouldn't cry. Not now. Maria finished with my hair and helped me into the dress. It fit like it had been made for me, probably had been. When I looked in the full-length mirror, I barely recognized myself. I looked like someone who belonged in a place like this. "Breakfast is served in the morning room at 8, Maria said, gathering her things. "Mr. Alessandro is waiting for you." The morning room was on the second floor, overlooking the gardens. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, making everything glow. A table was set with china so delicate it looked like it might shatter if I breathed too hard. Fresh flowers, roses, lilies, perfumed the air. Alessandro stood by the windows, dressed in dark slacks and a white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. The casual look somehow made him more dangerous, more real. When he heard me enter, he turned, and I watched his expression shift from neutral to something I couldn't name. "Sophia." He breathed my name like a prayer. "You look beautiful." Maria helped. I hovered near the doorway, uncertain. "Come. Sit." He pulled out a chair for me, and I approached carefully, aware of how close he stood, how his hand barely brushed my shoulder as I sat. "Did you sleep at all?" "No." Lying to him felt impossible. He took the seat across from me, close enough that I could see the shadows under his own eyes. "Neither did I. I kept thinking about you up there, in that room. Probably planning escape routes and questioning my sanity." "Are you sane?" The question escaped before I could stop it. His laugh was dark, genuine. "Probably not. Not where you're concerned." He poured coffee for both of us, added cream to mine without asking, because of course he knew how I took it. "But insanity aside, we need to discuss the practical aspects of this arrangement." I wrapped my hands around the warm cup, needing something to hold on to. "You mean my forced marriage to a stranger?" "I prefer to think of it as an arranged marriage, like they do in other cultures." He picked up his own cup, watching me over the rim, with the added benefit that I'm deeply, irrevocably in love with you. The coffee burned my tongue. "You don't love me. You're obsessed with me. There's a difference." "Is there?" He set his cup down, leaning forward. "I know you take your coffee with 2 creams and 1 sugar. I know you hate the smell of cigarette smoke, because it reminds you of your father. I know you cry silently, without sound, because you learned early that no one comes when you make noise. I know you have a scar on your left knee from when you fell off a bike at age 7. I know your favorite color is green, like the forest you used to visit with your parents before they died. I know you read romance novels from the library because they let you escape into worlds where people are saved. Tell me, Sophia, is that obsession or love?" Every word was a knife, cutting through my defenses. Because he was right. He knew me. Actually knew me, in ways no one else ever had. "It's both," I whispered, "and that's what makes it terrifying." "Good." He leaned back, seeming satisfied. "Fear means you're taking this seriously." A woman entered with covered dishes, setting them on the table with practiced efficiency. She didn't look at either of us, just served and disappeared. The food was incredible. Eggs, pastries, fresh fruit, bacon cooked perfectly crisp. My stomach growled despite everything. "Eat," Alessandro said, filling both our plates. "You need your strength for today." "What's happening today?" "Several things." He began eating, his movements elegant even in something as simple as cutting eggs. "First, we're going to your apartment to collect anything you want to keep. Then we're visiting your aunt to explain the situation. After that, we have an appointment with my lawyer to discuss the marriage contract." Marriage contract. I pushed eggs around my plate, like a business arrangement. "Every marriage is a business arrangement, Sophia. I'm just honest about it." He took a sip of coffee. "You'll have your own accounts, your own money. You'll want for nothing. In exchange, you'll live here as my wife, attend events with me and be faithful. That's all I ask." "That's all?" Hysteria bubbled in my chest. "Faithfulness to a man I don't love." "Yet." His eyes locked onto mine. "You don't love me yet, but you will. I'm patient, remember? And if I refuse? If I say no to all of this?" He went very still, and suddenly I could see the dangerous man beneath the civilized exterior. "Then I'll be very disappointed, but I won't force you into anything, Sophia. The choice is yours. You can walk out that door right now. I'll have Dante drive you anywhere you want to go. Your aunt's debts will still be cleared. You'll receive a substantial sum of money to start fresh somewhere else." Hope sparked. "Really?" "Really." But his smile was sharp. "Of course, you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, wondering if I'm watching. Because I will be. I'll know every job you take, every person you meet, every breath you draw. You'll never be free of me, Sophia. The only question is whether you want me in the shadows or by your side." The hope guttered and died. This wasn't a choice. It was an inevitability. "You're a monster," I said softly. "Yes." He didn't deny it. "But I'm a monster who will burn the world down before I let anyone hurt you. Can you say the same about anyone else in your life?" I couldn't. That was the terrible truth. No one had ever cared enough to protect me, to see me, to want me with this kind of intensity. It was twisted and wrong and completely insane. But it was also the first time in 4 years that I didn't feel alone. "I need time," I finally said, "to think, to process all of this." Of course. He stood, coming around the table to offer his hand. Take all the time you need, but while you're thinking, let me show you what your life could be like. I took his hand. What choice did I have? And let him pull me to my feet. We were standing too close, his chest almost brushing mine, his dark eyes searching my face like he was trying to read my soul. I'm going to court you, he said softly. Properly. The way I should have done if circumstances were different. I'm going to make you fall in love with me, Sophia. And when you finally say yes to marrying me, it will be because you can't imagine saying anything else. You're very confident. I'm very determined. His hand came up, fingers tracing my jawline with devastating gentleness. There's a difference. A knock at the door interrupted us. Dante entered, his expression carefully neutral, despite surely seeing how close we stood. Sir, the car is ready, and your mother requests a word before you leave. Alessandro's jaw tightened. Tell her I'm busy. She was quite insistent, sir. A sigh. Fine. Sophia, wait here. I'll just be a moment. He left, and I sagged against the table, my legs suddenly weak. This was my life now. Breakfast in morning rooms, staff who materialized and disappeared like ghosts, a man who watched me with eyes that held obsession and devotion in equal measure. Through the windows, I could see the gardens in full daylight. There was a maze made of hedges, fountains with stone angels, benches positioned in perfect spots for reading or contemplation. It was beautiful. A gilded cage was still a cage, but at least this one came with roses. He really does care for you, you know. I spun around. Isabella Caruso stood in the doorway, elegant in a cream pantsuit, her hair perfect despite the early hour. She moved into the room like a queen surveying her domain. Mrs. Caruso, I didn't hear you. I wanted to speak with you privately. She poured herself coffee with steady hands. Before this goes any further, you should understand what you're getting into. I don't think I'll ever understand what I'm getting into. Her laugh was bitter. No, probably not. Caruso men don't come with instruction manuals. She studied me over her cup, but they do come with certain expectations. Loyalty above all else, public perfection, private understanding that what happens within these walls stays within these walls. I don't understand. You will. She set her cup down with a soft clink. My husband, Alessandro's father, was very much like his son, obsessive, possessive, utterly devoted to the things he claimed as his. I was 19 when he decided I was going to be his wife. I had no choice in the matter either. Did you ever love him? Something flickered across her face. I learned to. Or perhaps I simply learned that love and possession sometimes look very similar. She moved closer, her perfume, expensive, floral, washing over me. Alessandro is softer than his father ever was. He actually cares if you're happy. His father only cared if I was obedient. That's a low bar. Welcome to the Caruso family, she reached out, straightening the collar of my dress with maternal efficiency. A word of advice, Sophia. Don't fight what's inevitable. Alessandro has decided you're his. Nothing and no one will change his mind. You can make this hard on yourself, or you can accept it and find what happiness you can within the parameters he set. That's not happiness. That's survival. Sometimes they're the same thing. She stepped back, examining me like I was a painting she was considering purchasing. You're stronger than you look. You'll need to be. There are people who won't be happy about Alessandro choosing an outsider. People with daughters they hoped he'd marry. People who see you as a weakness they can exploit. Are you threatening me? No, child. I'm warning you. Her expression softened slightly. Despite everything, I think you might actually be good for him. He's been half alive for 4 years, going through the motions, waiting for you. Now that he has you, he's dangerous again, focused. That's good for the family. Just try not to break his heart. Men like Alessandro don't recover from that kind of wound. Before I could respond, Alessandro returned, his expression darkening when he saw his mother. I thought I told Dante. You did. I ignored him. Isabella moved toward the door with grace. I was just getting to know your future wife. She's lovely, Alessandro. Treat her better than your father treated me. That's not a high bar, Mama. No. She paused in the doorway. But you're capable of clearing it. Don't disappoint me." She left, and silence filled the room. Alessandro ran a hand through his hair, suddenly looking exhausted. "I apologize for my mother. She means well, but she has a tendency to tell the truth," I finished. "Warn me that I'm entering a world I don't understand?" "Both." He offered his hand again. "Are you ready to face your old life? To say goodbye to it?" I looked at his hand, strong, steady, offering both salvation and prison. Then I looked at my own, still bandaged from yesterday's accident that had started all of this. The cut that had bled on marble floors and led me here, to this moment, to this choice that wasn't really a choice at all. I took his hand. "Let's go," I said. His fingers closed around mine, warm and possessive and terrifyingly gentle. And as we walked out of that morning room, down those grand stairs, toward a car that would take us to my old apartment, I realized something that made my heart race with fear and something else I couldn't name. I didn't want to let go. The apartment building looked even worse in daylight. Peeling paint, cracked windows, graffiti splashed across the entrance like angry prayers to gods who'd stopped listening. The contrast between this and the Caruso estate was so stark, it felt like we'd traveled to a different country. I pressed my forehead against the SUV's window, suddenly nauseated. "You lived here for 4 years." Alessandro's voice held barely controlled fury. He sat beside me, his body rigid, his hands clenched into fists on his thighs. 4 years in this, it was all we could afford. I cut him off. Defensive despite everything, not everyone is born into mansions. "No." His hand found mine, gripping tight. "But no one should have to live like this either. Especially not you." Dante and Luca flanked the vehicle as we exited, their eyes constantly scanning, hands positioned near concealed weapons. The neighbors who normally congregated on the stoop scattered like roaches when they saw the SUV, the suits, the aura of danger that surrounded Alessandro like cologne. The elevator was broken, had been for months, so we climbed 5 flights of stairs that smelled like urine and desperation. My legs remembered every step, every crack in the concrete, every stain I'd learned to avoid. Alessandro's fury seemed to grow with each floor, his breathing becoming more controlled, more dangerous. "This is it," I said, stopping at 5C. The door was scratched and dented, the number barely visible. I could hear the television blaring inside, some morning talk show my aunt watched religiously while nursing hangovers. I knocked. No answer, knocked harder. "What do you want?" My aunt's slurred voice came through the door. "If you're here about money, I ain't got none. Aunt Marie, it's me. Sophia." Silence. Then shuffling footsteps, the sound of multiple locks being undone. The door cracked open, revealing my aunt's bloodshot eyes and unkempt hair. She was still in yesterday's clothes, makeup smeared, reeking of alcohol and cigarettes. "Sophia?" She blinked, confused. "Why ain't you at work? And who the hell are—" Her eyes landed on Alessandro, and I watched recognition flicker across her face. Fear followed immediately after. "Mr. Caruso, I wasn't expecting—" "Mrs. Chen." Alessandro's voice was pure ice. "We need to talk." "May we come in?" My aunt stumbled backward, and we entered the apartment that had been my prison for 4 years. One main room serving as living room, kitchen, and dining area. A bathroom barely big enough to turn around in. 2 bedrooms. Mine little more than a closet. The place was a disaster. Empty bottles, overflowing ashtrays, dishes piled in the sink, the stench of decay and neglect. I watched Alessandro take it all in, saw his jaw clench harder with each detail. Dante and Luca positioned themselves by the door, blocking any escape. "Sophia, baby, what's going on?" My aunt's voice had taken on the wheedling tone she used when she wanted something. "Did something happen at the bakery?" "You could say that." Alessandro moved deeper into the apartment, his presence making the cramped space feel even smaller. He picked up an empty vodka bottle, examined it, set it down with deliberate care. "Tell me, Mrs. Chen, when was the last time you provided for your niece?" "I don't know what you... When was the last time you bought groceries? Paid a bill? Cooked a meal?" His voice remained calm, which somehow made it more terrifying. When was the last time you were sober long enough to notice that Sophia was working herself to death to keep you fed and housed? My aunt's face crumpled. Now wait just a minute. I'm not interested in excuses. Alessandro turned to face her fully, and I saw my aunt shrink back. I'm here to inform you that Sophia will no longer be living here or supporting you. Your debts have been cleared. This apartment has been paid for 6 months in advance. What you do after that is your concern. She's my niece. You can't just take her. I'm not taking her. She's choosing to leave. There's a difference. His eyes found mine across the room. Tell her, Sophia. My throat felt tight. Despite everything, the drinking, the neglect, the emotional abandonment, she was still family. The only family I had left. Aunt Marie, I'm leaving. I'm going to work for Mr. Caruso. Work for him. Her laugh was ugly, knowing. That what we're calling it now? I've heard the stories about the Caruso men. They don't hire girls your age to work, sweetheart. They— Finish that sentence. Alessandro's voice dropped to something lethal. Please. I'd love to hear what you think I intend to do with your niece while you've been drinking yourself unconscious every night. My aunt's mouth snapped shut. That's what I thought. Alessandro gestured to me. Get what you need. We're leaving. I moved to my tiny bedroom on autopilot, pulling out the battered suitcase I'd brought from my parents' house 4 years ago. There wasn't much to pack. A few changes of clothes, all worn and faded, some photos of my parents, a jewelry box with my mother's necklace. Books from the library I'd never returned because I couldn't bear to part with them. Is this everything? Alessandro appeared in the doorway, filling the small space. His eyes swept over my meager belongings, and something like pain crossed his face. 4 years and this is all you have? I didn't need much. No. He stepped closer, taking the suitcase from my hands. You just survived with as little as possible because you gave everything else to someone who didn't deserve it. She's all I had. Was all you had. His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing away a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. Now you have me, and I'm not going anywhere. We returned to the main room. My aunt sat hunched on the couch, crying, her makeup running in black streams down her face, manipulative tears designed to make me feel guilty, and they worked. At least a little. Sophia, please, she sobbed. Don't leave me alone. You're all I have left of your mother. Funny. Alessandro's voice was cold. She never seemed to remember that while you were drinking away Sophia's paychecks. I have a problem. I'm sick. You're selfish. He handed my suitcase to Dante. There's a difference. Sophia gave you 4 years of her life. You gave her nothing but more work and more worry. That ends now. I moved toward the door, my legs feeling like lead. This was it. The final severing of my old life. My aunt's sobs followed me, growing louder, more desperate. Sophia, Sophia, please, don't do this. Don't leave me. I stopped, my hand on the doorknob. Alessandro was beside me immediately, his presence solid and grounding. You don't owe her anything, he said quietly. Not guilt. Not explanations. Nothing. She's family. Family doesn't destroy you to save themselves. His hand covered mine on the doorknob. Come on. Let's go home. The word should have felt wrong, but as we descended those 5 flights of stairs, left that building that had never been anything but a cage, stepped into the SUV that smelled like leather and safety, I realized Alessandro was right. I was going home. I just hadn't known where home was until now. The drive back was silent. Alessandro held my hand the entire time. His grip firm but not painful, his thumb tracing patterns on my skin that felt like promises. Dante drove with practiced efficiency while Luca made quiet phone calls, arranging things in the background. When we pulled up to the estate, Isabella was waiting on the steps. She took one look at my face and dismissed Alessandro with a wave. I'll take her from here. You have that meeting with the Rossetti family. I can reschedule. You will not. Isabella's tone brooked no argument. Business doesn't stop because you've acquired a wife. Go. I'll look after her. Alessandro looked torn, his eyes searching mine. I'll be back by dinner. If you need anything. She'll be fine. Isabella was already guiding me up the steps. Go intimidate your business partners. Leave the girl to me. I watched him leave with reluctance written all over his face. Then Isabella led me inside. Not to my room, but to a sunny sitting room I hadn't seen before. Tea was already waiting, along with delicate pastries I couldn't imagine eating. "Sit," she commanded, and I obeyed. She poured tea with practiced grace, added sugar without asking, another thing they just knew about me, and pushed the cup into my hands. "That was harder than you expected," she observed. "I didn't think it would be easy, but you didn't think it would hurt." She sipped her own tea. "Leaving broken things behind always hurts, even when we know they were poison." We sat in silence for a moment. The room was beautiful. Cream walls, artwork that probably cost more than my aunt's apartment, windows overlooking the gardens where I could see gardeners working among the roses. "My son is obsessed with you," Isabella said finally. In case that wasn't obvious, it was obvious. "Good. Then you also know that obsession can be dangerous, for both of you." She set her cup down. "The Caruso men love fiercely. They also destroy completely. You need to understand which side of that you're on." "Which side was his father on? With you?" Her smile was sad. "Both. He loved me and destroyed me in equal measure. But I survived. And eventually I found my own power within this family." She leaned forward. "That's what you need to do, Sophia. Find your power. Don't just be Alessandro's wife. Be his equal. His partner. The only way to survive a Caruso is to match their intensity. I don't know how. You will." She stood, smoothing her skirt. "Now, we have work to do. You're meeting with the lawyer this afternoon, and you need to understand exactly what you're signing." The next few hours were a blur of legal terminology and contract clauses. The lawyer, Mr. Benedetti, was an elderly man with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. He explained the prenuptial agreement with clinical precision. "You'll have access to an account with $50,000 per month for personal expenses," he said, sliding papers across his desk. "The estate and all properties remain in the Caruso family trust. In the event of divorce—" "There won't be a divorce," Alessandro said from the doorway. I hadn't heard him return. He moved into the room like he owned it, which he probably did, and stood behind my chair, his hands coming to rest on my shoulders. "Continue." Mr. Benedetti cleared his throat. "In the unlikely event of divorce, Mrs. Caruso would receive a settlement of $5 million, plus the penthouse in the city. All other assets remain with the family. $5 million. More money than I could comprehend, for marrying a man I'd known for 2 days. However," Mr. Benedetti continued, "should Mrs. Caruso commit adultery, all financial agreements are void." "I would never—" I started. "I know." Alessandro's hands tightened on my shoulders. "But it's in the contract nonetheless. Standard for Caruso marriages. And for you?" I twisted to look up at him. "What happens if you commit adultery?" His expression darkened. "I wouldn't. The thought of another woman makes me physically ill. You're it for me, Sophia. There is no one else. There will never be anyone else." The intensity in his voice made my breath catch. Mr. Benedetti coughed uncomfortably and shuffled papers. "There's also the matter of the wedding itself," he said. "Mr. Caruso has requested a ceremony in 3 weeks. Is that agreeable to you, Miss Chen?" 3 weeks. 21 days until I became Sophia Caruso. Until this bizarre, overwhelming situation became permanent. My voice failed. Alessandro came around the chair, crouching in front of me so we were eye level. "I know it's fast. I know this is all happening too quickly. But I've waited 4 years, Sophia. I can't wait much longer." His hands found mine, cradling them gently. "Say yes. Let me give you everything. Let me protect you. Let me love you the way you deserve to be loved. You don't love me. You don't even know me. I know you bite your lip when you're nervous. I know you cry in the shower so no one can hear. I know you read the endings of books first because you can't handle suspense. I know you're terrified of thunderstorms because your parents died in a car accident during one. I know you, Sophia. Better than anyone ever has." Tears streamed down my face. Everything he said was true. Every intimate detail. Every secret I thought I kept hidden. He'd been watching, learning, cataloging every piece of me. "This is insane," I whispered. "Yes. He kissed my knuckles, his lips warm against my skin. But it's also inevitable. So say yes. Stop fighting what we both know is going to happen anyway. I looked at Mr. Benedetti, at his carefully neutral expression. At the contract spread before me, pages of legal jargon that basically said I was agreeing to belong to Alessandro Caruso for the rest of my life. Then I looked back at Alessandro, at his dark eyes full of obsession and devotion, and something that might actually be love, twisted though it was. Yes, I heard myself say, I'll marry you. The smile that spread across his face was pure triumph. He stood, pulling me up with him, and before I could process what was happening, his mouth was on mine. The kiss was everything and nothing like I expected, gentle but demanding, asking and taking simultaneously. His hands framed my face like I was something precious, while his lips moved against mine with practiced skill that spoke of experience I didn't have. I'd been kissed before, fumbling teenage attempts that meant nothing. This was different. This was acclaiming. When he pulled back, we were both breathing hard. Mine, he whispered against my lips. Finally mine. Mr. Benedetti cleared his throat again, louder this time. Shall we proceed with the signatures? The pen felt heavy in my hand. I stared at the dotted line, at the space where my signature would make all of this real, legal, binding. Alessandro's hand covered mine, steadying it. Together, he said softly. I signed. Sophia Chen, for the last time. In 3 weeks that name would be gone, replaced by one that carried weight and danger and power. Congratulations, Mr. Benedetti said, gathering the papers. I'll file these immediately. Alessandro was already pulling me toward the door, his excitement palpable. I want to show you something, he said, leading me through halls I hadn't explored yet, up another flight of stairs to the 4th floor. He opened a door to reveal a room that took my breath away. Wall-to-wall windows overlooking the entire estate, bookshelves lining every available space, filled with leather-bound volumes and new paperbacks alike. A reading nook with cushions and blankets. A desk with fresh flowers. This is your library, he said, watching my reaction. I had it prepared for you. Every book you ever checked out of the public library is here, plus hundreds more I thought you'd like. I walked in slowly, running my fingers along the spines. Pride and Prejudice, Jane Eyre, the entire Bronte collection, modern romances with bent covers, everything I'd ever loved, plus treasures I'd never dared to dream of owning. How did you? I told you. I've been paying attention. He came up behind me, his chest against my back, his arms wrapping around my waist. Everything you've ever wanted, Sophia. I'll give it to you. Books, clothes, jewelry, travel, anything. You just have to ask. And all it costs is my freedom. No. He turned me to face him, his expression serious. All it costs is your trust. Trust that I'll take care of you. Trust that I'll never hurt you the way your aunt did. Trust that when I say I love you, I mean it with every fiber of my being. You're asking for a lot, I know. His forehead rested against mine, but I'm offering everything in return. The sun was setting, painting the library in shades of gold and amber. In 3 weeks, I'd be his wife. In 3 weeks, this would be my life. Libraries and luxuries, obsession and devotion. A man who'd destroy the world for me but wouldn't let me leave, a gilded cage. But standing there in Alessandro's arms, surrounded by books and beauty, I realized something terrifying. I was starting to like my cage. The wedding was in 2 days. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in what would soon be our bedroom. Alessandro had insisted I move into the master suite after the engagement, watching seamstresses make final adjustments to a dress that cost more than a car. Ivory silk, hand-embroidered with pearls, fitted to my body like it had grown there. I looked like a princess from one of those books in my library. I looked like someone else entirely. "Bellissima," Maria whispered, tears in her eyes. "Mr. Alessandro will lose his mind when he sees you." The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind. Days filled with dress fittings, menu tastings, meetings with wedding planners who treated every detail like a military operation. Nights filled with dinners where Alessandro watched me like I might disappear. conversations where he learned my present while I slowly uncovered fragments of his past, and moments of carefully controlled physical affection that left me wanting more and terrified of what more meant. He'd kept his word. He hadn't pushed, hadn't demanded, hadn't entered my room without permission. But the tension between us had grown with each passing day, winding tighter until I felt like I might shatter from the anticipation alone. "All finished, Miss Chen," the head seamstress announced, stepping back to admire her work. "You're perfect. Perfect." I'd never been perfect at anything. And yet here I stood, about to marry into one of the most powerful families in the country, wearing a dress worth a fortune, looking like I belonged. "Thank you," I managed. "It's beautiful." They helped me out of the dress with reverent care, packaging it away like the treasure it was. I changed back into jeans and a cashmere sweater. My wardrobe had exploded in 3 weeks, filled with clothes I'd never dreamed of owning, and headed downstairs. Alessandro was in his study as usual. The door was ajar, and I could hear him speaking in rapid Italian, his tone clipped and dangerous. I'd learned that tone meant business, meant someone had displeased him, meant violence simmered just beneath his civilized surface. I knocked softly. The conversation stopped immediately. "Entra," he said, then switched to English. "Come in, Sophia." He sat behind an enormous desk, papers spread before him, a glass of whiskey at his elbow. He'd loosened his tie, rolled up his sleeves, and the sight of his forearms, strong, dusted with dark hair, did something to my insides that I didn't want to examine too closely. "Everything all right with the dress?" he asked, setting down the phone. "Perfect. They're finished." "Good." He stood, moving around the desk with that predatory grace I'd come to recognize. "I have something for you." From a drawer, he pulled out a black velvet box, not a ring box. We'd already done that ceremony, me wearing an engagement ring with a diamond so large it felt obscene. This was larger, rectangular. "You didn't have to. Open it." He placed it in my hands, then stepped back, watching my face intently. Inside lay a necklace that made my breath stop. Diamonds and sapphires arranged in an intricate pattern, each stone catching the light and throwing rainbows across the study. It was museum quality, the kind of jewelry that appeared in magazines with armed guards beside it. "Alessandro, I can't..." It was my grandmother's. He took the necklace out carefully, moving behind me. She wore it on her wedding day. My grandfather gave it to her the night before. Told her it was a promise, that he would give her the world, but she had to trust him to do it. His fingers brushed my neck as he fastened the clasp, and I shivered. The necklace settled against my skin, heavy and warm and priceless. Did she trust him? Eventually. His hands rested on my shoulders, and I could see our reflection in the window. Him tall and dark behind me dwarfed by his presence, wearing jewels worth a fortune. It took time. But she learned that when a Caruso man loves, he loves completely. Without reservation. Without end. I turned to face him, the necklace cold against my throat. And did he make her happy? He tried. Every day he tried. Alessandro's hand came up, fingers tracing the line of jewels across my collarbone. Some days he succeeded, some days he failed, but he never stopped trying. That's all I can promise you, Sophia. I'll try every day to make you happy, and if I fail, I'll try harder the next day. What if it's not enough? Then I'll keep trying until I die. His voice was fierce, absolute. There is no scenario where I give up on you, on us. You need to understand that. Before I could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at it, and his expression darkened. I need to take this. Business that can't wait. Of course. I started to leave, but his hand caught my wrist. Keep the necklace on. I want to see you wearing it at dinner. The call lasted hours. I spent the time in my library, trying to read but unable to focus. The necklace felt like a collar, beautiful but binding, a reminder of what I was becoming. Who I was becoming. Mrs. Alessandro Caruso. Dinner was tense. Alessandro was distracted, his mind clearly elsewhere. Isabella picked at her food with aristocratic disinterest. The silence stretched, broken only by the clink of silverware against china. There's been a complication, Alessandro said finally, setting down his fork. Nothing that affects the wedding, but I need to handle something tonight. I'll be gone until morning. What kind of complication? Isabella's eyes were sharp. The Morettis are making noise about territory disputes. Nothing I can't handle. He looked at me. I'm sorry. I wanted our last night before the wedding to be... It's fine, I forced a smile. I understand. Business comes first. His jaw tightened. You come first. Always. But this can't wait. He left shortly after, taking Dante and Luca and an SUV full of armed men. I watched from the window as the convoy disappeared down the drive, red taillights swallowed by darkness. You'll learn to hate those departures, Isabella said from behind me, never knowing if he'll come back, if this will be the night someone finally gets to him. You're very encouraging. I'm honest. She moved to stand beside me. My husband died in a business meeting gone wrong. 1 minute he was alive, negotiating a deal. The next, he was on the floor with a bullet in his chest. Alessandro was 23. He had to step into his father's position immediately. No time to grieve, no time to adjust. He became the man he is now because he had no other choice. I looked at her, seeing past the elegant exterior to the woman who'd survived losing her husband to violence. Do you regret it? Marrying into this family? Every day. Her smile was sad. And not at all. That's the paradox of loving a Caruso. They give you everything and take everything in equal measure. You just have to decide if what they give is worth what they take. She left me alone with that thought. I went to bed early, the necklace still around my throat, too afraid to take it off. Sleep came fitfully, filled with dreams of blood on marble floors, and Alessandro's eyes going cold and empty. A crash woke me. I sat up, heart pounding, disoriented. The clock read 3:47 a.m. Another crash, closer this time. Shouting. The sound of something breaking. I grabbed a robe and ran into the hallway. Staff members rushed past, their faces pale. Maria grabbed my arm as I started toward the stairs. Miss Chen, you should stay. Where's Alessandro? In the entrance hall. But you shouldn't. I was already running. The scene in the entrance hall stopped me cold. Alessandro stood in the center, his white shirt soaked with blood, his knuckles split and bleeding. Dante and Luca flanked him, also bloodied but standing. And on the marble floor, that pristine white marble, a man lay unconscious, his face a mess of blood and broken teeth. Alessandro! I didn't think, just ran to him, my hands frantically searching for wounds. Are you hurt? Where's all this blood from? Not mine. His voice was dead, flat. His. I looked down at the unconscious man, then back at Alessandro. His eyes were empty, cold. The eyes of the monster he'd promised he could be. This was the man who ran a criminal empire. This was the danger everyone had warned me about. I should have been terrified. Instead, I pressed closer, my hands finding his face. Are you sure you're not hurt? Something shifted in his expression, warmth flooding back in. I'm fine, Bella. Just had to send a message. In our home? Isabella appeared on the stairs, surprisingly calm given the bleeding man on her floor. Alessandro, we have people for this. He needed to see my face when I made it clear. Alessandro's arm came around me, pulling me against his bloody shirt. The Morettis sent him to spy, to find weaknesses. He was taking photos of the house, of Sophia's window. Ice flooded my veins. My window? He won't be taking any more photos. Alessandro's voice was soft, deadly. Neither will anyone else who thinks they can threaten what's mine. Luca and Dante were already dragging the unconscious man toward the door. I didn't ask where they were taking him. Didn't want to know. You're shaking, Alessandro said, finally looking down at me. I'm sorry. You shouldn't have seen this. I'm not afraid of you. You should be. But his arms tightened around me. I'm a monster, Sophia. I do terrible things to protect what's mine. This? He gestured to the blood, the violence. This is who I really am. I looked up at him, at this man who'd been watching over me for 4 years, who'd given me everything, who'd just beaten someone unconscious for taking photos of my room. I know who you are. I've always known. You told me from the beginning, and you're still here. I'm still here. And I realized it was true. I'd had 3 weeks to run, to change my mind, to refuse this life. But I hadn't. Because somewhere between the bakery and now, between obsession and devotion, I'd stopped seeing the cage and started seeing the man. Go upstairs, he said softly. Get cleaned up. I'll come to you when I'm done here. Your room or mine? His eyes flashed. Mine. It's time you got used to it. In 2 days, we'll be sharing it anyway. I should have argued. Should have maintained the boundaries we'd carefully constructed. Instead, I nodded and headed upstairs, my heart racing for entirely different reasons now. 45 minutes later, he appeared in the doorway of his bedroom. Our bedroom. He'd showered, changed into pajama pants and nothing else, his hair still damp. The cuts on his knuckles were bandaged. Come here, he said quietly. I went to him, and he pulled me against his bare chest, his arms wrapping around me completely. We stood like that for a long moment, just breathing together, his heart beating steady against my ear. I would kill for you, he whispered into my hair. I would burn this entire city down before I let anyone hurt you. Does that terrify you? Yes. I pressed closer, but it also makes me feel safer than I've ever felt in my life. He pulled back to look at me, his hands framing my face. I love you. I know you don't love me yet, but I love you enough for both of us. I have since the moment I saw you counting pennies in that grocery store. I've loved you through every hard day, every tear, every moment you thought you were alone. You were never alone, Sophia. I was always there, watching, protecting, waiting. That should be creepy, but it's not. Not anymore. His thumb brushed my lower lip. Is it? No. The admission felt like surrender. It's not. Then say it. Say you'll marry me, not because you signed a contract, not because you have nowhere else to go. Say it because you want this. Want me. I looked at him. Really looked. Seeing past the danger and the obsession to the man beneath. The man who'd given me a library because he knew I loved books. Who cleared my aunt's debts without being asked. Who watched me eat at every meal to make sure I was taking care of myself. Who looked at me like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. I'll marry you, I said clearly. Not because I have to, because I want to. Because somewhere in these 3 weeks I started falling in love with you too. The kiss was different this time, desperate, claiming, full of 3 weeks of restrained passion finally unleashed. He lifted me easily, and I wrapped my legs around his waist as he carried me to the bed. Our bed. We fell together into silk sheets, and his weight on top of me felt like coming home. After the wedding, he said against my lips, his control clearly fraying, we do this right. Wedding night, tradition, all of it. 2 days. 2 days. He rolled onto his back, pulling me onto his chest, my head over his heart. And then you're mine in every way, legally, spiritually, physically. Mine. Yours, I agreed, and felt his arms tighten around me. We fell asleep like that, tangled together, 2 days away from forever. The wedding was perfect. The gardens had been transformed into something from a fairy tale, white roses everywhere, an arch dripping with flowers, chairs draped in silk. 300 guests, all dressed in their finest, all there to watch Alessandro Caruso claim his bride. I walked down the aisle alone, my choice, not his. I had no father to give me away. No family except an aunt who wasn't invited. But I didn't need anyone. I was giving myself, freely, to the man waiting at the altar. Alessandro looked devastating in his tuxedo. His eyes locked on me from the moment I appeared. I watched his throat work as I approached. Saw his hands clench at his sides like he was physically restraining himself from running to me. When I reached him, he whispered, "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." The ceremony blurred. Words were spoken. Vows exchanged. Rings slipped onto fingers. And then the priest said, "You may kiss your bride." Alessandro pulled me close, one hand in my hair, the other on my lower back, and kissed me like he was drowning. And I was air. The crowd cheered, but I barely heard them. There was only him, only us, only this moment where everything changed. Mine, he breathed against my lips. Finally, completely mine. Yours, I agreed, always yours. The reception was elaborate, dancing, dinner, toasts that made me blush, and made Alessandro's eyes darken with promise. His hand never left mine, his body always positioned between me and the rest of the world, possessive, protective, perfect. As the sun set and fairy lights twinkled to life across the gardens, he pulled me close for a slow dance. His lips brushed my ear. Ready to leave? Where are we going? Nowhere. His smile was wicked. Just upstairs. I'm done sharing you with these people. We slipped away during a champagne toast, running through the mansion like teenagers, laughing as he chased me up the stairs. He caught me at the door to our bedroom, pressing me against it, his mouth finding mine in a kiss that promised everything. I love you, he said between kisses. I've loved you so long. Let me show you. Let me spend the rest of my life showing you. Yes, I gasped as he lifted me, carrying me over the threshold. Yes to everything. The door closed behind us, shutting out the world. And in the darkness broken only by moonlight, Alessandro Caruso made me his in every way that mattered. Gently, thoroughly, worshipping every inch of skin like I was sacred. And I loved him with the intensity of someone who'd been drowning and finally learned to breathe. Later, wrapped in his arms, my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat steady and sure, I realized something. The cage was gone. I wasn't trapped. I was home. What are you thinking? He murmured, his fingers tracing patterns on my bare back. That I was wrong. This isn't a prison. No? No, I pressed a kiss over his heart. It's salvation. You saved me, Alessandro. From my old life, from drowning, from disappearing. You saw me when I was invisible. You loved me when I was nothing. You made me real. His arms tightened. You were never nothing. You were everything. You just needed someone to show you. We fell asleep like that, two people who'd found each other against impossible odds. Obsession turned to devotion. Possession turned to love. And in the morning, we'd wake up to a life neither of us had chosen, but both of us wanted. The rain had stopped weeks ago, but finally, standing in Alessandro's arms, wearing his ring and his name and his love, I understood what it meant to be dry, to be warm, to be home. Epilogue. 6 months later, I sat in my library, the winter sun streaming through the windows, a book open on my lap. Downstairs, I could hear Alessandro conducting business, his voice carrying up through the halls. We'd settled into a rhythm, mornings apart, focused on our separate worlds, afternoons together, evenings wrapped in each other. The nightmares had stopped. My aunt had checked herself into rehab, using money Alessandro provided without my asking. And I'd discovered I liked being Mrs. Caruso more than I'd ever imagined. The door opened, and Alessandro appeared, immediately crossing to me. It was our ritual. He couldn't go more than a few hours without touching me, as if reassuring himself I was real. Hello, husband. I smiled as he bent to kiss me. Hello, wife. He settled beside me, pulling my feet into his lap. What are you reading? Jane Eyre. Again. The one where the crazy wife is locked in the attic? His smile was teasing. Any similarities to your own life? Only that I married a brooding, obsessive man who'd burned down his house before losing me. Fair point. His hands massaged my feet absently. I have a question. Yes? Are you happy? I set the book aside, giving him my full attention. You ask me that every week, and I'll keep asking until I'm confident in your answer. I'm happy, Alessandro. I cupped his face, making sure he saw the truth in my eyes. I'm more than happy. I'm loved. I'm protected. I'm home. You gave me everything I didn't know I needed. Good. But his eyes still held shadows. Because if you ever wanted to leave, I know, you'd let me go. I'd learned this about him in 6 months of marriage. For all his possessiveness, all his obsessive devotion, he loved me enough to destroy himself if it meant my happiness. But I'm not leaving. This is where I belong, with you. In this life we built together, even though I'm a monster, especially because you're my monster. I moved to straddle his lap, and his hands immediately went to my waist. You're terrible and obsessive and would probably kill anyone who looked at me wrong. I would, he confirmed. But you're also gentle with me. Patient. kind. You've never raised your voice to me, never made me feel small, never made me regret saying yes to this insane arrangement. It was pretty insane, he admitted. It was perfect. I kissed him softly. We were perfect. We are perfect. Stop asking if I'm happy and just trust that I am. His forehead rested against mine. I don't deserve you. Good thing I don't care about deserve. I care about want, and I want you. Today, tomorrow, forever, forever, he repeated, like a vow I can work with forever. Outside, snow began to fall, transforming the gardens into a winter wonderland. Inside, in my library with my husband, I felt warmth that had nothing to do with the fireplace and everything to do with the man holding me. I'd been drowning in that bakery, bleeding and invisible and dying by inches. Alessandro Caruso had pulled me from those depths, given me air, given me life, given me a love so consuming it bordered on madness, and I'd learned something important. Sometimes obsession and devotion were the same thing. Sometimes possession was just another word for home. Sometimes the cage was really salvation wearing a different face. I was Sofia Caruso now, wife to a mafia boss, queen of a criminal empire. Owner of more books than I could read in a lifetime. And I'd never been happier. The rain had stopped falling, the sun was shining, and I was finally, completely, impossibly home.